Hey there, groovy dudes and dudettes. This is Thomper Be Thompin', and in this video I'm going to give a demonstration and a how-to of some of the maintenance you got to do on these Yamaha Kodiak 450s. This is a 2020, purchased in fall of 2019. It's got almost 700 miles on it and almost 100 hours on it. So in the video, I'm just going to try my best to quickly blitz through all of the stuff you should be doing at about the 2-year mark. Huge caveat, there's 2 things I'm not going to do. I am not going to replace all the brake fluid. I think I might wait until next fall to do that, even though I should be doing it now at the 2-year mark. And I am not going to check the valves for clearance and make any adjustments. She's purring like a kitten, just like she has been from day one. I haven't noticed any changes, but I think around year 3 or 4, I might do a quick valve check. I don't have the shims right now anyways to make any true measurements and any adjustments, but these Yamahas are such low compression, detuned bikes that this valve train shouldn't be stressed too much at all. So in this video, I'm going to take off the plastics to access the radiators and everything, just to get a better look at everything. Obviously you want to start with a clean machine, so I already washed mine pretty well, but I'm going to do an oil change and filter. I'm going to check the spark plug and replace that, even if it's unnecessary. I mean, they're so cheap. I got a package of them. I'll probably just replace it anyways. I'm going to change the rear differential oil, the front diff oil. I'm going to specify exactly what types of oil you need and the oil filters that you need, and I'll give you the specs on the spark plug and everything. I am going to drain and replace the coolant, and then I'll of course clean and replace the air filter with a new one. I just have 2, so I'll oil up the new one and put it on, and then I'll clean the old one and just have that one ready to go for next time. I'll pull the spark arrestor out the back just to inspect that, see if it needs to be cleaned off at all. And then a lot of inspection items too. So we'll inspect the brake pads. I will make sure that my brake fluid level is at the right level, and probably lubricate any the brake cables. The front brakes are hydraulic, but the rear is a cable actuated brake. And then there are a few grease points on the bike too, around the suspension and the swing arm and stuff. So we'll make sure that we lubricate all those Zerk fittings with the correct kind of grease. And that's it. Let's dive in. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to be putting on a brand new air filter. This one's from Twin Air, and it comes without any oil on it. So the oil that I'm going to be putting on requires about 4 hours, it says, to allow it to tack up before installing it on the machine. So right now is a good time to oil this thing up real quick and set it aside so it can be ready to go when we're done with all the other maintenance. And to do this, I like to completely saturate the filter. I'm not as much of a fan of the spray-on type oils, but once you get the filter completely saturated, you kind of just lightly massage it, and you're squeezing out all the excess oil. Take a peek inside, make sure that every nook and cranny has been oiled up. Give her a healthy squeeze. Make sure that there's no more dry spots. This one's looking pretty good. And that is it. Set her aside for a few hours, allow that to tack up. Okay, first things, take the front rack off. It's 4 12-meter bolts on top, and then there's 2 10-millimeter bolts underneath, access through the bottom of the fender there. Okay, next, pop off the seat, just pull it out, and then to get this black plastic shroud off over top of the gas tank, you just have 2 clips that you get with a flat tip screwdriver, and then these 2 little bolts up front are 5mm Allen wrench. Once you've got that done and you've reinstalled your gas cap on top, now's a good time to disconnect the negative terminal. Next up, you can take off this top cover, which is retained with just these clips. 2 clips you'll have to pop out with screwdrivers up front, but be careful that your 12 volt is connected, so you'll have to disconnect that as you're removing it. After that, you can get these side panels and they just pull right up and out. Okay, next up we're going to be doing the engine oil change and also replacing the engine oil filter. As you can see, I've got the machine jacked up in the air just to make it a little bit easier, but you can do this without lifting the machine in the air. So, I've already got everything set up and ready to go. I've got my drain pan ready, but I purchased a Tusk oil change kit, which comes with the correct kind and quantity of oil, but really you just need full synthetic 10W40 oil. Mobil 1, Valvoline, anything will work fine. You're going to be using 2.54 quarts of oil if you are also replacing the filter. If you're not replacing the filter, it's only 2.43 quarts. So this kit from Rocky Mountain also came with a Tusk branded oil filter that we'll be replacing and some crush washers. The engine drain bolt is a 19mm socket, but before I do any of that, I'm going to use this 8mm socket to pull off this entire cover here. So this plastic cover you need to pull off in order to access your oil filter. So instead of popping this off, this allows you to check and fill your oil. You can just pop this off first. So there you go. It gives you clean access to your engine oil fill and your engine oil filter. So I'm going to crack this, drain all the oil out, reseat the engine drain plug, and then we'll replace the oil filter. This is a little bit tough to replace without making a mess because it's just kind of sitting horizontally instead of either upside down or vertical. So recommend you maybe stuff some towels up underneath here to make this a little cleaner and reduce your cleanup time. So crack this open first, then hit your drain plug. So here is the completed engine oil and engine oil filter change. Now is a good time to wipe up around your filter and wipe up around your drain bolt, and then start the machine. Oh, keys over here. And then start the machine, let it run for a little while just to see if you got any leaks. So I'm going to let it run for a few minutes, check for leaks. Quickly, I forgot to mention that the oil filter, they tighten that down to 13 pound-feet, and the engine oil drain plug tightens down to 20 pound-feet. Next, we're moving on to the rear differential. Okay, a couple quick tips before the next clip, which is the rear differential. I highly recommend that you use one of these little pump mechanisms. They're really cheap. You can get them from any auto store. It's got a flexible hose, which makes reaching the fill area much easier, and this fill area is also extremely small, so even my smallest funnel couldn't fit inside of there. Second tip is to heat up this gear oil. This gear oil is extremely thick, so I heated mine up using a big old pot of water. And also you can take off your rear hitch receiver, which is just 4 14mm bolts. One on each side up here, and then 2 down here. Very simple, but it just gives you a little bit more access. All right, I'm gonna do my best I can with my lighting here. But for the rear differential, this is incredibly simple. You've got your fill plug right here towards the back of the rear diff, but your drain plug is pretty far underneath there. You can see on my Ricochet off-road skid plates that it's pretty far back, but still very easily accessible. My skid plates have a hole already cut out for the drain bolt, so with the stock setup you might need to remove the plastic skid plate a little bit, but that should be pretty simple. So for the rear diff, I highly recommend that you test your fill plug first. I've taken I've drained out the rear diff on an old truck one time, and then I realized I couldn't get the fill plug off to refill the thing. So if that's mostly a problem with older machines, so just test your fill plug first. Your fill plug is a 14 millimeter and your drain plug is a 14 millimeter. So they make it very easy. Now you're gonna fill this. You can see I already reoriented my catch pan here, but you're gonna fill this up with, let me refer to my notes real fast. Yamaha wants you to use, what do they call it? Yamaha friction modified shaft drive gear oil. Yamaha sells this. You can get it from retailers like Rocky Mountain and others, but they say in a pinch you can also use what is called SAE 80W90 API GL5 hypoid gear oil. I'll write that down on the screen, but basically this. I chose Valvoline hypoid gear oil. Now the biggest thing is going to be the GL5 rating. Your rear diff and your front diff have different specifications for their GL rating, which just means different amount of additives to the oil, which can create extra noise and extra wear on certain items in there. So your rear diff is GL5 and your front diff is GL4. So you can get the Yamaha stuff, or you can just buy this Valvoline. It looks like it's GL5 and GL4 rated. So a little bit confusing, but if you want to have no issues whatsoever, just get the Yamaha stuff. So I'm just going to loosen up my fill plug. I'm going to drain out this old oil, and then I'm going to put 0.4 quarts in. The rear differential, basically you just fill it till it starts seeping out of your fill plug here. I'm going to use this tiny little flexible funnel to do that, to make it really easy. But your front differential is a little bit different. We'll go over that. Okay, so doing your front differential is going to be basically the same thing as the rear, except for a couple of extremely important differences. So basic process, drain, fill, using your flexible hose. If you have one, this one's a little bit easier to get to and it has a little wider opening. So here is your fill. Hope you can see that. That's a 21 millimeter socket. And your drain. Here's your drain. That is actually a 5 millimeter Allen wrench. So the bigger thing that you got to look out for on this front differential is that, one, it requires a slightly different kind of oil. The same stuff, I'll put it on the screen right now below, but you want GL4. So I guess the front diff requires GL4. Fewer additives, I think, something like that. Anywho, the most important thing is you cannot simply fill this one up until it starts running out of the fill hole. You need to precisely measure 0.37 quarts. Any more or any less can cause problems inside the front differential. So you want to be very precise when you fill that up. So same basic thing, crack open the fill bolt. Once you've successfully done that, drain it out, replug your drain hole, put 0.37 quarts in, and then re-torque down the cap. The torque for the fill cap is 17 pound-feet. All right, here we go. All right, next I'm gonna swap out the spark plug. I'll inspect the old one, but since I already have a couple replacements ready to go, might as well put a brand new one in. But first and foremost, disconnect your negative terminal. And there's your spark plug. Just pop off your connector, and it's an 18 millimeter socket. Okay, so this is probably gonna be difficult to see with this GoPro camera, but the manual says that the porcelain insulator should be a light brown to tan color. I would say we're at the medium brown color there. So probably still within spec, but I purchased the wrong spark plugs on accident. So I'm gonna be ordering those in the mail, and then I'll replace it. But for now, I'll just put this one back in. All right, one little trick when getting this air assembly apart. Normally it sits like this with the foam filter cylinder around it. I just take a hammer and I kind of punch out that bottom end, which will release this end. It can be pretty difficult to get apart with just your hands. And then you can peel off your old air filter and then cinch on your new one. Put a little rim grease on there and you're good to go. Okay, next up we're going to replace the coolant. And you can see here I've reoriented my lifts to give a better view of the front end. Took off the front tires, which allowed me to inspect the brake pads. Those look good in the front on both sides. Additionally, it's going to give us better access to some of the things we got to do to drain this coolant and then replace it. So as far as the coolant goes, we are going to be using coolant that contains ethylene glycol. Additionally, you want coolant that is compatible with aluminum components, since these Kodiaks have aluminum blocks. So step number one for this coolant process is going to be remove your radiator cap. Step number two, this is probably the trickiest, or close to it, is going to be to remove the drain plug for your coolant. It's this one right in the middle here. You have to take off the panel that covers your oil, your engine oil fill, these 3 8mm bolts. You get that off, and then you can access this drain plug. I'm going to use one of these little flexible funnels and do the best I can to funnel it from here through the floorboard and into this blue bucket. Once that's all drained out, your next step is going to be to get in here to your coolant reservoir. And then you're going to pop the top off, which is right behind this plastic piece here, and then get a bucket underneath here and do the best you can to, it's going to be impossible to see, but on your coolant reservoir tank, right up underneath here, is a connecting hose about the size of a pencil. As a simple little metal clip that's keeping it on. You're going to pop that off and drain out your reservoir tank. So at this point, they want you to flush the system with tap water. I would probably just use distilled water if you can get your hands on it, but I think the Yamaha engineers know what they're talking about. Tap water is probably fine. So once you have the system completely flushed, you're going to reinstall your hose onto your coolant tank, and then come in here, reinstall your drain plug, and you're gonna first fill up your coolant reservoir tank to the full line on level ground, and then come in here and top off your radiator to where there's fluid all the way up to the top. Put your radiator cap on, start your engine, run it for a few minutes, check for leaks, turn it off, let it cool down, take your radiator cap back off, and make sure that the fluid is still up to the top. If it's not, you want to add in a little bit more. Additionally, I did not see anything in the manual that tells you how to bleed the system of air in case you get any air trapped in there. On my dirt bike, there's a process to do that. On the top of the cylinder head, loosen this bolt, and you just pour, or you loosen the bolt a little bit until coolant fluid comes out, but that is a 2-stroke engine, so doesn't seem to be any issues with air getting trapped in there, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. And once you're sure that there's no leaks and your fluid stays topped off, that's it for your coolant change. Okay, we are down to our last maintenance item, which is going to be lubricating your suspension joints and your drive shaft. So I apologize if it's really dark, but down in your rear suspension, you've got a Zerk fitting up top and down low on the knuckle for these bushings inside the knuckle there on each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4. None up top that I can see, but additionally, and this is going to be even harder to see, you've got a Zerk fitting for your unit, or your drive shaft, where it connects to the rear differential, and there's another one in the same exact spot where it connects up front. So none of those on the front drive shaft, just the rear drive shaft and just the rear suspension. Now to do this, you want some lithium based grease. Check your owner's manual if you need to see exactly what kind, but anything that's things and drive shaft U-joints and things like that. Now is also a good time to inspect everything. Give a visual inspection. Check each boot at each corner. Leaks. Pop off your spark arrestor and clean that out. Make sure that's not clogged. The little screen inside the spark arrestor, if that is dirty, will cause your machine to run poorly. Be a little clogged up. So yeah, full inspection, front and rear. Do all your brakes. Check your levers for the appropriate amount of play. You want a little bit of play in your brakes, at least that cabled brake. And then make sure that your rear brake is where you want it and make any adjustments if needed. Lastly, if you feel like it, I think these are 10 mils to go around your CVT belt. You can pop that off and give it an inspection as well. But at 2 years, it's probably perfectly fine unless you've had your machine submerged in deep water. So that's it for the maintenance video. Thanks for watching, everybody.